briefing, there was a big story that Gwede was so angry that he was not allowed to talk to the media. And at that time, I'm in the camps in Western Sahara. So tomorrow I'm going to Kala for my mother-in-law's funeral. Now, if I wouldn't be here, again, there would be another story that have you seen now, Mandas is no longer briefing the media and so forth. And I said to Zizi, yes, I'm preferring this. And I said to Zizi, let's have this media briefing today. It's difficult to persuade Zizi to agree to such unconventional arrangement. The National Executive Committee of the NEC held its meeting, first the meeting of the NEC, on 24 to launch on the 25th January 2016. That meeting was convened in preparation for the Lekgotla. Because what we are avoiding is to go to Lekgotla and the NEC hears things there for the first time with the extended section of the NEC, which is the alliance partners, the leagues, the deployed cadres were all invited to the Lekgotla. But the NEC must have the advantage of saying, let's tweak with that and get this right. We had that NEC meeting on the 24th and 25th. Then we had the Lekgotla on the 25th and 27th, which is ending today. And the Lekgotla, just to remind those who do not know, is a gathering of the ANC that is held every 6 months. There's a January Lekgotla, there's a July Lekgotla. And all of them identify priorities requiring attention and guide the work of the ANC deployees in the government. So this is in preparation for the government Lekgotla. By the time the cabinet meets in the cabinet Lekgotla, they must know exactly what we see as priorities as an organization. The NEC deliberated at length on a recent emergence of racism and what seems to be racist individuals becoming more emboldened within the Southern society. And the historic mission of the ANC being the creation of a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. And that has been always been premised on a vision of a nation united in diversity, not obvious to the injustices of the past, but determined to engender and foster social cohesion. In other words, our focus is not in the past, it's what we should be building moving forward. The political report delivered by the President was emphatic on the need for the ANC and the society to confront and defeat racism in society wherever it occurs. And to do this, South Africa must urgently respond to the frustration of the black majority, many of whom believe that their attempts at reconciliation and nation building are rejected by the white minority. And thus, what characterizes the racist incidents that we have seen recently? Economic marginalization and inequality perpetuate the notion of superior race and an ingrained system of domination. NEC has thus reaffirmed wealth redistribution as both a moral and an economic imperative. Institutions that have been set up to restore dignity of our people and protect our democracy must be utilized. The ANC has therefore instituted applications in the Equality Court against individuals who have been at the forefront of perpetuating a racial conflict, including a number of key members and former members of the Democratic Alliance. Danny Kola-Barnett, Chris Roberts, Penny Sparrow, and the action is intended to send an unequivocal message that racism has no place in our society and the racial exploitation and superiority must be eradicated. That informed the response of Mutabo. Mutapo in Parliament to next to pray on the Kruger, Paul Kruger debate. That you see, they see that debate from different angles. One was seeing Paul Kruger as a hero, one was seeing Paul Kruger as a person who perpetrated mass killings against people, including chiefs of our people. So that is quite important. It must not be sanitized. It can only be when we deal with that history objectively that we can actually be able to move on. What is important about history is that you can't eradicate it, you can't erase it, but you must use it as a point of reference to know what we should avoid and what we should do more. The ANC invites all stakeholders, including the media, to join the case as friends of the court, a united coalition of South Africans against a scourge of attempts to uphold white privilege at the expense of black majority. And the NEC calls on all South Africans to defend democracy, reject racism, and build a non-racial, non-sexist society. NEC further considered the report on the recently renewed trade agreement between South Africa and the United States in the form of what is called AGOA. The NEC took a decision that there must be a review of all trade agreements entered into by the democratic government since 1999. The review must assess socio-economic impact and the extent to which the agreement advances South Africa's economic interest. At all times, government must be alive to the need for an exit strategy where agreements have a potential to defeat the core objective, which is to expand, increase, and grow our domestic industries and market. In other words, there was a realization in the NEC that when you enter into international trade agreements, you are in a terrain not of your own choosing. You are dealing with another country which will have its own interests. And it is the duty of our negotiators to make compromises that ensure that benefits is bigger than what you have compromised on. And that is what was looked into. That's why we say we must review all the other agreements. AGOA gave us an opportunity to have a practical look at an international agreement, trade agreement, and to say the agreement with EU, with China, with everybody, they must all come. We look at them and we're taken on board. We understand what is entailed on them. Because there was a big debate about the aspect of the chicken trade, poultry, chicken and poultry. What is the difference? You see, poultry. And we said we should not look into poultry. Maybe poultry was the area where we made certain compromises. But look at all of it, what the automotive industry has gained out of that. Look at the steel. Look at various aspects of trade and say, overall, did this agreement give away advantage South Africa should benefit on it? And it was backed by giving us a detailed explanation on the increase of trade between the US and South Africa since AGOA. Now, on the Lekgotla, some key successes since the 2015 Lekgotla. Lekgotla reflected on the work that has been done to date in fulfillment of the mandate bestowed on the ANC by the people of South Africa. We noted in particular the following key successes. One, poverty has been reduced and the living standards of South Africa improved through government basket of social services. That doesn't mean there's no poverty. There is poverty. There are people who are not sure whether they will have a plate of meal today. But overall, there is an improvement in the living standards. And these include, among them, the no-fee schools, that is part of redistribution, school nutrition programs, social grants, the progressive realization of free higher education for the poor. We are recording near universal access until grade 9. There is an increase in grade R enrollment and increased expenditure per capita for South African children. More than 250,000 young people are benefiting from the youth employment tax incentive, and concerted effort is being made to deal with unemployment among women and youth. There is improvement of social and economic infrastructure at local government level and work being done by our state-owned enterprises to ensure energy security and increase in mobility of our people, providing the much-needed impetus on the economy. Sectors such as automobile, clothing and textile, manufacturing, specifically of buses, trains and taxis, are seeing a healthy growth. In local government, the number of entities with unqualified audit reports has increased. The number of clean audits has increased. There is a greater focus on good governance as well as communication and engagement with our people. South Africa has risen on the Global Competitiveness Index of the World Economic Forum from 56 to 49. I know that it is not newsworthy. If we drop from 56 to 62, I'm sure it would be subject for talk shows in our radio stations. That we have improved from 56 to 49 is talks about it. Due to the increase in uptake of information communication technology and improvements in innovation. The Lekgotla has welcomed these achievements and resolved that the ANC government must focus on the following moving forward. One, the economy. The creation of decent work, more jobs, sustainable livelihood remains a key priority of the ANC. While accepting the challenging emanating from the depressed global economic climate, the pressure on emerging markets and sluggish economic growth, bold actions are expected from the government to grow the economy inclusively, avert the possibility of a credit rating downgrade, because if we get that downgrade, we are just a notch above what is known as the junk status, and create an enabling environment for more jobs, decent work, sustainable livelihood. To this end, we must, one, engender consensus between all key stakeholders to help stabilize the economy, save jobs, restore fiscal sustainability and credibility. We must deal decisively with the threat of state capture, resolve governance problems in SOEs, and consolidate the implementation of sound fiscal practices to strengthen the people's confidence in the South African economy. Locate land reform, redistribution, restitution and development and tenure, and agrarian reform at the center of our efforts to turn around the economy. The commitment to land and agrarian reform must be demonstrated through adequate resource allocation to this sector, including the expectation on government to implement the 2003 AU Maputo Declaration that enjoins signatories to allocate 10% of the national budget annually to agriculture. Our view is that if we can invest in agriculture, we'll dent the levels of unemployment. There are examples in the continent of countries that has invested in agriculture and turn around. Nigeria is one, Ethiopia is another. You can go on and on and on. Government must urgently analyze and resolve the stalemate on set aside for youth and black-owned businesses. The fact that there's been no load shedding since August 2015 seems to be indicative of an improvement on energy security situation. But we feel that it must be analyzed whether such seeming stability in electricity provision is a result of an improvement in the supply side of ESCOM or simply indicates the parastatal's ability to meet demands in a slow growth economy. We said, will we have the stability if we register a higher economic growth? And that analysis is what we need to look into and not be satisfied that we didn't have load shedding. Because if we can clock 2.5% growth in the economy, will we still see the stability on the supply, on the electricity supply? And that question is posed to the relevant ministries and the institutions. Lekgotla has expressed concern on the proposed electricity price hike as reliable and affordable provision of electricity is critical for the country's viability and economic growth. National consensus must be built on the proposed energy mix with specific core focus on renewables and nuclear energy in order to ensure greater energy security. The Lekgotla didn't take the alarmist approach when dealing with nuclear. We thought that it is quite a viable alternative in the energy mix, which will have all sources of energy, whether it is renewables, nuclear, coal, all of them must be in the basket. We must do an ongoing analysis of them and not be alarmist when we talk about one and think that the other is a panacea to our problems of energy. The Mineral and Petroleum Resources Department Amendment Bill must be finalized urgently in order to create policy and regulatory certainty and mining stakeholders engaged on an accord to save jobs in the industry. There were a number of mines that are indicating that they want to retrench people, close shafts and all that. Part of that is something that is more objective than subjective, in the sense that it is the price of commodities. And our view is that commodity prices by their nature are cyclical. And it would be unfortunate if every time the cycle turns down, we get alarmed that there's a crisis. Prices of commodities go down, pick up, go down, pick up all the time. Where it becomes a problem and difficult to manage is when the price of a number of commodities goes south at the same time. That is what the problem is. On education, much progress has been made in improving access, ensuring redress in our education system. Lekgotla, however, identify high fees, particularly at higher education level, as having an exclusionary impact in society. Free education is and remains the ANC policy, and the Lekgotla supported intervention put in place by government, including the no increase in fees for 2016 and the establishment of a commission of inquiry by the President to investigate the modalities of progressive realization of free education for the poor at post-school level. And the capacity of the state, the NEC Lekgotla reaffirmed the capacity of the state as being critical for the success of our developmental and transformative agenda. Government is therefore expected to be proactive and build its capabilities to play its role. This capability must include strategic orientation, ideological capacity, organizational capacity, and ethos, as well as technical and developmental capacity. The government must build strong institutions able to translate policy frameworks into implementable programs and execute them. That is a state that we're looking at. Among others, individuals and cadres who do not possess requisite skills should not be employed and deployed in the state. Bureaucratic arrogance and an uncaring attitude when dealing with our people must be eliminated, and the ANC must lead in shaping a common national agenda derived from the NDP and mobilize society to take part in the implementation through preparatory people-centered development. And our view is that the state is critical. We can have all the policies and programs. If the state doesn't have the capacity, we are not going to be successful. Among the issues that we thought should be looked into, over-reliance on consultants is an issue that is a formula for a disaster in the long term. On local government and the election, the ANC goes into 2016 local government election emboldened by the work done at local government to improve the lives of our people for the better. Our urban areas have been deracialized. In many municipalities, financial management has been stabilized. Many more of our people have access to quality, reliable, and sustainable basic levels of service. Housing delivery has been accelerated, and there is a decrease in the number of public protests. National and provincial government have intervened decisively when necessary to ensure that weak and dysfunctional municipalities are capacitated, and if in the interest of better governance, Political leadership has been changed. That is something that we do not shy away from. Our efforts in the coming year must be on consolidating the gains of the Back to Basics program and creating thriving and sustainable local economies. And the ANC is confident of retaining all metropolitan municipalities we currently govern and will be fighting to win the city of Cape Town back. Because sometimes the narrative is one that says we are defending those metros that we are governing. We still have the desire and the ambition to work hard and invest on taking back Cape Town. Now, conclusion is that this 2016 Lekgotla was distinctive in that it spoke to the fact that the ANC realizes and is confronting the challenges facing the country. We are confident that South Africa will overcome the difficulties before us as we are a resilient country led by a resilient organization. At all times, when confronted with challenges, the ANC has been able to lead our people to change and adapt to the current conditions. 2016, the year of advancing people's power and local government, is about this, harnessing the collective power of our people toward the social compact that recognizes the role of all stakeholders to build a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. That is the end of our story for the Lekgotla. It's a summary of a very detailed work that has been done, both in commissions and in the plenary of the Lekgotla.
Thanks very much, SG. We will now allow questions. Ranjani, just wait for the SG to be ready. Take a breath, SG.
I'm breathing. I'm breathing very well.
Ranjani, go ahead.
Thank you, SG. I'm Ranjani Mansami from the Daily Maverick. On the issue of racism, you said the President said in his political report there's a need to confront and defeat racism. Is the ANC going to do anything proactive to promote race relations in the country? The Democratic Alliance, for example, has announced a series of debates. Is the ANC going to do anything, I don't know, to build social cohesion? On the issue of the economy, was there any discussion about the messaging around economic issues and financial matters and how this is communicated in public, considering the repercussions of the reshuffle of finance ministers in December? Has there been any guidance from the ANC as to who should speak on these issues and how they should speak on it in order to manage the country's image? Thank you.
Thank you.
Tulasizwe Simelane, ENCA. Two questions, SG. I'm not sure if this specific issue was raised in the NEC Lekgotla or in the NEC meeting before then, but the issue that has come to the public domain around the mayor of Beaufort West and the letter that has been published, which basically suggests some kind of interest in determining how tender processes are adjudicated to the benefit of the ANC. Now, I know that at the NGC, the ANC had a strong message about real and perceived issues of corruption, and also that was reiterated in the January 8th statement. What is the view of the NEC in light of this thing, this letter that has come to the fore now? And then secondly, the issue of the nomination of candidates. It looks to me, SG, like you are losing control of this. I mean, you took a position on how it should proceed at branch level. But I mean, some of the events we are seeing playing themselves out, for instance, in Tshwane. And I'd like you to respond and be broader than just addressing the specific examples that I give. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I'm Mohamed Mahoma from Independent Media. SG, we've noted that the main opposition, DA, seems to be focusing on jobs as the main issue going into this election. What is the posture of the ANC coming out of this Lekgotla, particularly on the issue of jobs? And what mechanisms are there for them to be implemented? My second question, we know that you told us earlier that you were going to receive a report from the Treasurer to serve at this Lekgotla. What kind of economic outlook came out from that? Is there a sense that we can continue to invest more spending in infrastructure and social spending as well? If you can just give us a bit of a take on that. Thanks.
Patrick McRody from the Wall Street Journal. SG, you mentioned that robust debate over the AGOA trade pact. Was the conclusion of that debate that AGOA is worth it for South Africa, is better for South Africa than not? And on rethinking those other trade pacts with China, with the EU, with whoever else, are you worried that that might cause uncertainty in investors from those countries about whether the agreements they already have in South Africa will continue?
Yeah, can I just ask you to answer this? I don't want to keep you long. It's early in the evening. We'll take the last round. Last week.
You see, Ranjan, fighting racism is not a beauty contest between the ANC and the DA. Because before you talk about fighting racism, building a non-racial society, you must appreciate the fact that it is a political issue, it is a moral issue, it is an issue that is informed by the historic evolution of the nation. I always explain to people that apartheid was a policy that created superiority and inferiority. And therefore what we should be fighting is to fight inferiority, to fight the superiority of a section of the population and the perceived inferiority of a section of the population. It is a challenge that is on both sections of society. Black South Africans cannot continue exaggerating the domination of whites. They must actually be bold enough to confront racism. That's why confronting racist incident is a real transition. You see, in the first 20 years, we try to be nice to each other and reconcile and nice to each other. When there is impatience on those who have been victims of racism, it cannot be seen as racism from both ends. It is not. Those who are victims are impatient. Those who have been beneficiaries of racism are emboldened. They say a number of things. Now, and I don't know what a program can the DA have on anti-racism. I don't know. Can I tell why I don't know? If you run a white party, and when you invite blacks into that party, you'll never create a non-racial party. It's the body of the party is a white racist party, it's remnants of what was left by apartheid. You are inviting blacks into that space. You're not necessarily building a non-racial party society. What you should be doing is to deal with social dynamics in society. And that's what the ANC is going to invest in. That it can't be theory, it can't be debate, it should be access to land, allocation of land to the people who are deprived of access to land. It should be all programs that are ensuring that black South Africans benefit from the economy of the country. And if you don't do it, that you can have 101 debates as the DA is proposing, you will not arrest racial conflict in society. Because those who do not have access to the basic needs and the basic necessities for development will never be happy with the debate. Once our people begin to have access to land, that's why in the body of our report we refer to accelerating of the allocation of land to our people. If we don't do that, we're not going to address inequality and racism. On the message around the economy, you're confusing two things. You say following the reshuffle, leave the reshuffle. The message, there's no confusion as to who communicates what. If the cabinet takes a decision, the cabinet communicates that decision. If there's an issue that should be trade related, DTI in the main communicates that. If there's an issue on agriculture and forestry, fisheries and forestry does communicate that. So there's no confusion of communication. So the message of the country is not about who communicates in government. It's about whether as a country we have the same message. If the government goes out and come up with that message, does business have a similar message in going out? If there's contradiction between what government communicates and what business communicates, the country pays the price. And the improvement from 56 to 49 in the rating, competitive rating, is a function of an effort put on having a common message that is coherent, that resonates with the investors globally. And that's what we should be working on. Must invest more time on ensuring that we have a common message. You see, if you go to the Fraser Institute rating of South Africa as a mining country, it is low because we don't have a mining champion of the country, and people who talk on behalf of our mining are basically foreign countries that talk for their countries. Anglo-American is run by a CEO who is not a South African. You can list all of them. And if that is the case, we'll continue being rated low because the message that will go to the world must reflect the standing of the country. If we don't achieve that, we'll battle to have a convincing message to the world. And I think an investment that has been given to that is quite an important investment by both business and the government. And then Davos was quite a good platform for that common message from Team South Africa. Now, the mayor of Beaufort West, I don't know when a tender is adjudicated in favor of the ANC. How does that happen when the ANC has no company that has put a tender? And I would want to get clarity to us on that issue. How does a tender get adjudicated in favor of the ANC if the ANC has not tendered for that job? Yes.
Well, in the letter, sir, there is a suggestion that we are in an election year and we're an ANC-run municipality, and we would hope that you would, in handling this particular matter of the construction of this center, make sure that, I don't have the specific...
Okay, fine. The point I'm making is that's why it is always difficult to ask a different question than the person who made the statement. To me, I can't understand how a tender can be adjudicated in favor of the ANC when the ANC does not have that tender, doesn't have a company that is actually tendering for the job. So I'm sure Prince should answer that question to be more specific. What does it mean? Will the tender go to companies and companies become conduits for the ANC? I'm very wary of that because, Holomisa made a statement here that there is money that has gone to the ANC for salaries and that, the Deutsche Bank, this. Actually, there's no such a transaction. Even if you can go to the public protector, they will not find that transaction. I'm wary of people who use the name ANC. And I would only come to a conclusion that if that is the case by a mayor in Beaufort West, he is embodying the ANC, therefore he may be a beneficiary. That is what should be investigated. But the ANC doesn't tender, it has no company that tenders. If an ANC-linked company tenders, you can have a debate about that. And that will be a different debate. So the right person to answer that question competently will be Truman Prince. On the nomination of candidates, you seem to be losing control of that because of what happened in Tswane, you know. Sometimes you surprise me, you know, how sometimes you think. And, you know, in research, just academic research, you don't generalize until there is a trend. You know that principle. You don't, on the basis of an incident, generalize. That is basic research requirement. Now, you can't say when there's an incident in Tswan and another one in Durban, Njanga, then say you have lost control, there's a collapse of the process. That is unscientific, total unscientific. You don't generalize on the incident. If you're asking me, what do we do with such incidents, I will tell you that we take proper action on those actions. The Tswana case of showing this something that should not be shown in public is being attended to. Because the meeting in Changa that resulted in the shootings was a Communist Party meeting, the general secretary of the Communist Party, who happened to be an NEC member of the ANC, is not here today because he had to go there. So in other words, we are attending to incidents as they happen, but in the majority of cases, there are no incidents. There are provinces where we are at about 70% of PGMs and having held public meetings, no incidents. Now, you see, when we received the report, for example, of the provinces, we were ridiculing the Northwest and said there are always problems around Bujanala and Ngagamtiri Mulema. But in the Northwest, those regions are ahead of everybody in terms of PGMs and meetings with the communities. And I was saying to them, where there is stability in Kenneth Kaunda, very slow progress, I said to them, this is a Marxist dialectical proof of contradictions always leading to forward mobility. So we don't have a situation of chaos during the nomination of candidates. There will be incidents. When they happen, we attend to them. DA focusing on jobs. What will the ANC focus on? You see, DA is focusing on jobs, but if you look into where their focus is, you will see that they're not focusing on jobs. They are protecting capital. Because if they are focusing on jobs, they would be marching to the Chamber of Mines, to the Chamber of Commerce, and say to the private sector, you own 70% of the economy. Please have clear programs of creation of employment. Instead, they can even march to Lutulas for jobs. So that is not seriousness about creation of jobs. If they are serious, they must not protect capital. They should not be substituted for capital. They should deal with the employment creation holistically and focus on the private sector and say to the private sector, you still have a big chunk of the economy. Please come up with clear programs of employment creation. Now, if the expectation of the day is that the government must create jobs, the government will be bloated. The government will be bloated. The government must create policies. The private sector must be serious about employment creation. And the DA must join us in that call. A report from the Treasury. Are we going to continue spending on infrastructure and social spending? Let me tell you, there's something in economics called counter-cyclical interventions. It means, counter-cyclical intervention means when there is a downturn in the economy, you continue spending on creating economic infrastructure. That is not a cost, it's an investment. It becomes a problem if you increase consumer spending when there's a downturn. And therefore the government cannot stop investing on infrastructure because infrastructure constitutes physical infrastructure for the economy. It is the right time to invest heavily on that infrastructure for the economy when there's an upturn in the economy. There must be infrastructure and capacity in the economy to absorb that upturn. So you're not going to see a slowdown on infrastructure spending. Nor can you reduce social spending. For example, if you do that, you will just drift the poor who are beneficiaries at the bottom end of society who are beneficiaries of social programs. So you can't stop that. You will create a crisis in the country. AGOA, vis-a-vis other agreement, as I said that we're going to be looking into other agreement, but there are issues that we raised about AGOA. The serious attempts by the US to bring policy issues in the negotiations. BEE policies for South Africa, employment equity, the Act on Security, the amendment of the Act on Security and all those things have nothing to do with trade relations with the United States. Therefore, any efforts of the United States to bring policy issue in the negotiation was actually bordering on being mischievous. But at the end of the day, that agreement is concluded now. It must be implemented. I don't think the implementation of it should be on the basis of the United States saying that if we don't have our chicken on shelves on date X, we may reconsider it. That approach will not work. And actually what we came to conclude that the biggest economy of the world, the United States, is not our biggest trading partner, by the way. It's number 3. It's behind China, it's behind the EU. But we must drive for access to that economy. It's a very big economy. It's important to us. But it will not bully us around. And that is a call on us to continue looking for alternative markets for South African products, including intra-continental trade. It's low. It must increase. We must have more trade within our sister countries in the continent. So those are the lessons that we're drawing from AGOA. It's a very important agreement. It's a very important economy. It's a very important trading partner. But the attempt to bully us into doing things that we should not ordinarily do gave us an indication that we must do more to look for alternative markets and work harder to increase our access to other regions of the world. And that doesn't mean that we don't want to have a trading relation with the US. We would like to increase that relationship. But it should be an equal relationship between ourselves and the US in terms of trade.
Thank you, SG. That was the last from that side. Wait, I want to come to this side now. Let me start from the back. Oli, because I know you want to ask last.
From the ANC. SG, the NUM in Mpumalanga is raising a major issue surrounding jobs, and ESCOM is saying that a situation akin to Aurora is unfolding at a ESCOM power station where a Gupta-aligned company is about to be awarded, in fact they say it's an open secret, that it is about to be awarded a contract to supply coal to the ESCOM power plant in Mpumalanga, and that this
Where in Mpumalanga?
at Arnott.
That's better. Because when you say Mpumalanga, there will be Hendrina, there will be Duva, there will be Krill, there will be Mata, there will be many others. Arnott. Okay. Okay.
So, and they're saying that their biggest concern is that sons of very prominent figures in the ANC are part and parcel of this Gupta-run company, and for them, this is now an issue that they really want for the ANC to address. The second question is around the tensions between the Minister of Finance and the SARS Commissioner Tom Moyane. The biggest concern being raised by economists and analysts is that this is not the time for the ANC-led government to allow such a situation at a time of economic uncertainty in the country. And the last question is around the issue that erupted in KZN around giving bursaries to virgins. This in an effort to create a non-sexist society. So the question is this really constitutional? Thank you.
uyasmosha nje emxholweni
What are my chances, young?
usmosha nyanya funa sithini
I don't know, there's a hand behind you, Oli, I can't see. Natasha, please.
Natasha from the Business Day. First question is about engendering consensus between stakeholders. Shortly after the 2008 meltdown, there was a group that got together to do the same thing. It was a partnership, and it was a social compact, and there were agreements made, and nothing came of it. We are now in another very serious economic situation, and we're trying to do the same thing again. How are we going to do it differently? And the second question is on SOEs and state capture. Can you elaborate on what the ANC sees state capture as, and in which institutions?
come again
Can you elaborate on the ANC's definition of state capture and in which institutions, in which SOEs?
state or corporate
State
Precisely.
capture.
Number two, point number two on the statement.
State capture, the threat of a state capture.
okay
Phew.
SG Michael from ANN 7. I just want to know if the Tax Laws Amendment Act was discussed at all considering COSATU was at Lekgotla. And secondly, the presidency today released a statement saying that the legislation will be reviewed in 2 years' time or every 2 years. Is that an acknowledgement that COSATU successfully sort of pressurized government into considering that as an option to sort of appease COSATU's concerns?
You from where?
From the Sunday Times.
Okay.
I'm just querying, I'm just asking with regards to the local government elections, and just in terms of the timetable, firstly, how soon will ward councillors be chosen, and is there a date when they will be announced? And also there was a bit of sort of uncertainty from speaking to provincial leaders particularly over who decides about the mayors. And there was a lot of controversy with regards to an NEC member saying the NEC is now going to decide, and the PEC saying, no, we still have that power. So I just wanted to get some clarity. I read all the documents, and it's a bit uncertain as to who at the end of the day decides who's the mayor, and will the ANC uphold the decision of the NGC that they will announce the mayors before the elections. That's just the second thing. And the third thing, I was mostly covered on the retirement reforms, but the ANC has promised COSATU that you will speak to Treasury as per the statement made by COSATU. And I know that ANC hasn't spoken since that meeting on this matter, but the presidency is saying today that it's too bad. 1 March is going to come, and these laws are going to be in place. So have you spoken to Treasury? Has it now conceded that it's going to go ahead? Have you told COSATU that there's nothing more you can do? Thank you.
I'm taking you last on the side.
Thank you so much. It's Golden from Eyewitness News. Okay, SG, you spoke about the use of consultants in government, and I just want to bring it to outsourcing at universities and get the ANC's view on the protests that are continuing. What we're seeing is the protests are being led by movements that are not aligned to the ANC, and in fact, Nahawa has said that they think there's a dark force that's controlling these protests. What is the ANC's view on that? And then just on the retirement.
so it's your view that there are dark forces
No, that's
Says
Nahawa's
now.
Nahawa's view. And just on the retirement reforms, previously, SG, you've said that COSATU is using political blackmail during an election year with its opposition to the retirement reforms. Is that still the ANC's view on this? And do you agree with the presidency statement that the consulting that was done by the Treasury was sufficient?
SG, let's answer these, and then we'll take the last two.
The last two hands this side. Okay. Now, who was the first question? Who asked the first question? About Anot. Olinga. Oli. I spent a number of years in the NUM, so I have a background of trade unionism. One of the things that you don't do, as an advisor I would give to trade unions, is when you are confronted with a situation of the possibility of a closure of a mine like Anot, to bring all sorts of conspiracies, because when you do that, you are disarming yourself. Now, if you are a trade union leader, Exaro want to close Anot, your primary responsibility is to engage Exaro on the closure of Anot. That's why there is Section 189 that is used to negotiate a closure, downscaling of operations, because that is the first battle that the NUM must fight at Anot. If the NUM is not fighting that battle, it is wanting to fight a battle that is speculated. It's a rumor that a Gupta-aligned company will take over that mine, and therefore there are sons of prominent leaders who are in that company. They're falling into a very dangerous trap. The trap they're falling in is to actually talk to the narrative that children of politicians are proxies of politically connected, okay? And therefore, they're not entitled to do anything. They can't be professionals even if they have studied. They cannot be business people even if they take initiative. And I think they must separate that debate from an issue that is serious facing their members at Anot. It's a debate on its own that has not been entertained in South Africa. What do I do if I am a prominent leader of the ANC? I have 4 kids, 3 of them are graduates, professionals in their own right. What should they do? Should they sit at home until I step down as Secretary General of the ANC? They must never work anywhere. If they work, it can only be a function of my influence. Do you get my point? I can tell you, Kolo, that I have a daughter who is a quantity surveyor, who is busy with masters, worked in Kusile. The heat was so strong that he had to go to the private sector. Do you get my point? Because that is the quantity surveyor, she's on site professionally, was neither here nor there. Everything she did there was perceived as a squared-as child. I don't subscribe to that narrative, okay? Unfortunately, the press council has endorsed it in the ANC Daily Dispatch case that, no, politicians must be scrutinized and therefore their families are proxies of political connected. I don't subscribe to that. I think it's actually very nonsensical. Okay. You know, when my son went to China to do masters in agricultural economics, I said to him, go to China, study, have your masters. When you come back, we'll see whether we can continue sending you to school, because you may be unemployable because you are a mandasha. It's a terrible situation. So I don't want to mix a serious matter of the possibility of the closure of a mine with a silly debate of whether sons of prominent politicians are in a company. Because I would imagine that if Exaro gives out that license will be open and people will contest for it. And I don't want into speculation that it will be given to a Gupta. I don't want it to get into that. So the NUM on this matter must deal with the question of whether Anot should be closed. Is it because it has life up to 2032? You know that. It has life up to 2032, Anot. And therefore it is the duty of the NUM to engage DMR and Exaro that why do you close a mine that is alive to 2032? If what they say about the Guptas is what comes out of that engagement, it's a different matter, then it's a continuation of that battle. That would be my strategy if I was a leader of the union. I won't be running for cover and say, let's fight some imaginary battle of the Guptas when Exaro is closing a mine. The battle of the NUM must be directed at Exaro now. It's an employer. That is the employer who wants to close a mine. That's what the NUM must confront. If Exaro is let scot-free because they can't fight them because there's a threat of a Gupta, then I think there's something of not doing what you should do as a trade union then. I don't want to venture into the tension between finance minister and SARS, okay? Let me tell you why I don't want to venture into that. It's because I have not engaged with that situation. It's outside of the scope of the ANC. Okay, it will be handled at government level, and even if we do put our advice, it will be in a government process. So it will be ambitious of me to say, this is what we're going to do to deal with that issue. So I don't want to venture in that. My apology for that. Bursaries to virgins. Hey. Which municipality is this? It's Tugara. Tugara, who's the mayor there? ANC mayor. We didn't discuss that. In the Lekgotla. It's quite a unique criterion for allocating bursaries, you know. That if you are a virgin, when you pass grade 12, you deserve a bursary. No, we didn't discuss it.
Would anybody in the NEC leadership qualify?
I'm not sure. We're old. We're old enough that actually we've taken the full cycle. You can find virgins amongst us because we're old enough to be at that stage again. See? Okay. On the social combats and the agreements of 2008 and what is different now. Natasha, can I tell you the problem with that question? Is that because you did something in 2008 when there was a global financial meltdown, it didn't give you wonderful results, therefore don't do anything now. That's the essence of your question. Yes, that's the essence of your question. That what is that you are going to do now because you didn't get any results in 2008? I would say that is not factually correct, by the way. In 2008, 2009, we're in a recession. We registered negative growth for 3 quarters and officially drifted into a recession. The interventions took us out of a recession. We've never drifted into a recession again. Actually, from that recession, we have never registered negative growth, not in a single quarter. So when you say there are no results, I don't know what results did you expect. Did you expect 7-10% growth as it is in China and India? If we don't reach that, there's no result. The result is that we drifted into a recession. We pulled ourselves out of a recession. Since then, we have never registered a negative growth. And one of the things that we should be working hard to do now even before we talk of a nice, beautiful growth, is to ensure that the economy doesn't drift into a recession. We must not register a negative growth for quarter one, quarter two, and quarter three. Even if we don't get into a recession, if we register a negative growth for a quarter, it will be bad for us. So that is the challenge facing our economy today. And we'll do everything that we can do to avoid a situation of drifting into negative growth. And one of the issues that we should consciously work on is that we should not have another downgrade in terms of the credit rating. Because if we get that, we will be in trouble. It will be very expensive to raise loans for economy, even for investment. The question of state capture in SOEs. State capture, we have talked about corporate capture, where we said businesses get into individuals who become proxies of business interest in the ANC. The state capture is a different one, is when people outside of the state begin to have heavy influence on the state and state institutions. And our view is that the Lekgotla has warned us to work against that and ensure that those institutions operate as institutions of state, and they must be protected as much as we can from outside influence in terms of the direction they take. That is what we were talking about there. And that warning came up very strong from the Lekgotla. We didn't have a focused discussion on the Tax Amendment Act. We didn't have any detailed issue. It was raised as part of the issues because we're not focusing on it. We're not focusing on the alliance relations. We're dealing with the Lekgotla, which is in preparation for the Cabinet Lekgotla. And if the President says it can be reviewed in 2 years' time, whether that is an act of appeasing COSATU, I don't think so. It's a normal process. Any law can be reviewed after 2 years, any other law. But you said you never heard us talking on this matter. Which one?
On the meeting.
On the meeting.
On that meeting with COSATU, not on the matter.
No, you just didn't listen. We didn't talk to the Sunday Times. I was in the Power FM talk show, okay, on this matter. And what I explained in that talk show was, listen, we're still grappling to understand what is the actual fight that we're apparently in. Do you know when you're fighting? It's very difficult to fight when you walk here and you switch off the lights and it's dark and we fight. Because when you do that, you'll never know what the essence of the fight. Because we said, listen, the public service is already on pension, so they have preservation. So this amendment will bring nothing new to the public sector. 2, what we understand of this amendment is that what you have already in the Provident Fund will be administered in terms of the current rules. And therefore, if I have 200,000 rand in the retirement fund today, it will not be preserved. 3, preservation is something that will happen in between 5 to 10 years, depending on the level, because it will be kicking in when you have accumulated 247,500 rand in the new money from 1st of March. So there is no immediate threat to Provident Fund or Pension Fund, even on the 1st of March. So what we took out of the meeting with COSATU was the fact that, listen, we agree with you that let's accelerate the debate on the comprehensive social security, so that the question of preservation should be an issue that is handled within the context of comprehensive social security. That is what we said when we were talking on this matter, because we have spoken on this matter. To more than 1 hour, I will give you Power FM as but an example. So that is where we're going to engage further with COSATU. What is the issue? What should we do? And I think the question of the comprehensive social security is an urgent matter. We must take it up ourselves and actually work with COSATU in ensuring that that debate is finalized. So that when we have a fight, we must have a fight that is more comprehensive, not about preservation as a principle, because I don't think there can be any trade union that is actually having a principal problem with preservation, because when there's no preservation, that is a life sentence for a worker to always retire into poverty. Let me tell you how. A number of workers get the lump sum. They undertake massive capital projects like building a house. And because that is the lump sum, sometimes you build that house when you are at window level, the money gets finished. And then you find a number of walls when you go to the rural areas instead of houses. And I think preservation is important in the sense that it gives you an earning beyond your retirement. And that's why when you see pensioners who got lump sum and pensioners who are on pension look different. Anybody who have been in the rural areas will give evidence to that. And I can give that evidence as a former mine worker and a former leader of the mine workers. I've seen sometimes the ugly side of retirement fund with no preservation. Sometimes I think, okay, I'm retiring, here is my lump sum, let me buy a combi, and then becomes a taxi owner. And then sometimes when I buy that combi, there's nothing left in the kitty. On the first instance of a breakdown, you are stuck. And my view is that there must be an objective debate about it. The principle of preservation, whether it is bad or not, and the question of this comprehensive social security. That's our view, and we are engaged in COSATU on that. How soon will be the mayors be selected? We're busy with that. There are quite a number of areas where the process is complete. Actually, the majority of wards, councillors has been selected, taken to communities, and there's a decision on who the councillor will be. But the process of the ANC takes that to local authority, to the communities. It goes to RLCs, that is regional list committees, PLCs, provincial list committees. But I can tell you that by April we'll be through with everything, including the national list committee. Actually, at provincial level, we put a deadline of the 14th of February for all public meetings to be held. That is the target date. We will decide on the mayors. We have a process in the ANC. And I think if there is any announcement that says the NEC will lock itself here and announce mayors, actually that was a wrong announcement. I can say that confidently. Well, they may be announced by the NEC, but the process of regions nominating 3 candidates for a particular municipality to the PEC, and the PEC selecting one, and then bring that for a discussion in the NEC, is a process that will follow. So it will not be a question of taking all the powers from the provinces and the regions and just sitting here in the head office and appoint mayors everywhere. That would be quite dangerous. And there's no such a decision. There's only one resolution on that matter, and it is the resolution of the 52nd National Conference of the ANC. So what will be open for discussion would be how do we strengthen that process so that the NEC protect the integrity of the process. So that is it. According to COSATU, the NEC was to talk to the Treasury. Obviously, the Treasury is involved on the matter, but it's not a question of a checklist. You have talked to the Treasury. That is not the issue. The issue is Treasury involved, Department of Labor involved. Let's deal with the problems and the issues as I have outlined as issues coming out of that act. Political blackmail. Let me tell you what would constitute political blackmail. It would be for a COSATU that go to its Congress and resolve to support the ANC in the elections, and when you get irritated, you announce that you're not going to support the ANC. That would be political blackmail. Okay. What is right is that the COSATU has taken a resolution to support the ANC. If there are issues, let's engage with those issues. Can you imagine? I always tell the people that it's very difficult to be the ANC because people will want this, otherwise won't support you. Want free education now. If you don't give it now, there will be no election. It can't work that way. We should engage, debate issues, take resolution. We must be systematic on anything we do so that we don't take rash decision and drift into a disaster. That's our view. So in other words, COSATU was discussing the Tax Amendment Act and provisions thereof and related matters. That engagement must continue. We're not doing that because there's a threat of no support for elections. We're doing it because it is the right thing to do. Outsourcing in universities, that debate is a correct debate, but my own view is that the trade union operating in that space must take it up, full stop. And my attitude will be the same as I said on the NUM, that the trade union movement should never hide behind the genuine issues of students. Students have issues, they must have their issues and be settled, and we must be focused on that. And don't say because there is an environment of protest by students, then you piggyback on the student for issues that should be issues of collective bargaining. That is my attitude on that issue. Collective bargaining issues must be taken up by trade unions. And if trade unions give away that space, they will lose power. I did one research at one point. I looked into the trade union density in Australia, and we asked a question: why did trade union density in Australia drop from 74 to 21 in one decade? Every document we read pointed to one reason, that they gave the authority to declare on increases and improvement of conditions to government declarations. And then workers stopped believing that trade unions have a role, and they could only look up to the Labour government to declare increases and improvement of conditions. And people just left trade unions because they didn't see the effort of trade unions linked to the benefits that accrues to them. And as an advisor, I would give to trade unions that trade unions must take their responsibility serious and do their work. Otherwise, people will see no reason to be in trade unions. And it will be a sad day if unions are weakening because of that.
That was ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe briefing the media on the outcomes of the NEC Lekgotla, taking a variety of questions from various journalists from issues, wide-ranging issues, Francis. He spoke about the Tax Amendment Act, and he was saying that it will be reviewed in 2 years and that is not being done to appease COSATU. COSATU obviously was upset, saying that this wasn't the way to go and this wasn't good for workers.
Yeah, this is all about the law that comes into effect on the 1st of March, and there's actually been confusion because you then won't be able to take out your full retirement benefit, your full lump sum. It will be paid off month by month, but it only affects contributions from the 1st of March. He said, I was interested what he said about COSATU not being able to have a principled stance against preservation, because it's so important that people save, and I think government is doing this to kind of force people to allocate their retirement savings rather than spend it all, not plan properly, and then be a huge burden on the state. He said preservation as a principle COSATU cannot argue against, but COSATU is arguing against it, saying that if you don't allow people to take that lump sum, they can't, for instance, maybe pay off their house and not worry about the interest payments. I think there's a huge disagreement, but we do know government's stance, and it won't change for at least 2 years.
I stand to be corrected, but I think the stats are something like only 6% of South Africans are actually ready for retirement when they retire.
Yeah, so I actually support this because it does help people save. And I think what you're talking about is, you were saying people live longer. And this is huge planning that needs to be done for the next 30 years, say 40 years after you retire. So some people are living longer and they're not planning properly. I think given the low savings, the burden on the state, this is all that government can do right now. A lot of economic issues were raised. 2008, 2009, Gwede Mantashe says we were in recession. He was defending what government did at that time and said that the government intervention actually took us out of the recession. We apologize, the sound was a bit muffled. If I heard him correctly, he may have made a mistake. He said that we haven't registered any negative growth, quarterly negative growth since then, when we in fact did last year. There was a scare that we may fall into recession again, but we didn't. We saw one quarterly contraction and then growth after that, but certainly a focus on the economy.
Another issue that came up was trade between the US and South Africa, talking about AGOA, the much talked about AGOA. The ANC saying they're going to review all trade agreements. What does that mean?
This, I think, is significant. All trade agreements since 1994 will be reviewed, and I get the sense that government may be regretting giving in to US demands to stay in AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which of course gives us preferential access to US markets. I didn't hear this full comment. It's been tweeted that he said some of the demands by the US bordered on the mischievous. So he's saying, and this is fair enough, we have to look at the benefits versus what we lose when we give in to, we give in to the concessions that we had to be part of these sort of trade arrangements. I think that's fair enough, but this could create a bit of uncertainty that investors complain about. We say, yes, we want to be part of AGOA. A month later, we say we're going to review all trade agreements and we're worried about it. It's fair enough that we can look at the benefits versus the costs, but hopefully that is done quickly for the uncertainty, I guess.
Something else investors also worry about is energy security, and they spoke about Eskom, saying that they want stability from Eskom. Having load shedding is just not enough.
I think he was very frank there, facing the fact that we're basically closer to getting to junk status. According to the credit rating agencies, that affects our costs of servicing our debt. And he said that the state-owned enterprises need to be a focus. I think that's what everybody wants to hear, because we can't let state-owned entities add to that debt burden, which is something that the credit rating agencies are worried about.
He did say they will be dealing decisively with state-owned enterprises. He also touched on issues like racism, saying that racism has no place in our society, and he was citing the recent racial utterances by Penny Sparrow and the like, the social media wars that have erupted. And he also said that he's calling on society to defend democracy.
I think he even called on media houses to join that case that the ANC has launched against several alleged racists, and saying we need to stand up for democracy. Just finally, according to my notes, Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and the head of SARS in the news reportedly at loggerheads, he said he didn't want to talk about that issue. He faced it, but he said it would be handled at a government level.
And lots of people have been talking about the Virgin Maiden Bursary. He spoke about that. It's happening at the Utukela District Municipality in KwaZulu-Natal. There was lots of laughter in the room when journalists asked him about it. He said it was a very unique way. Wouldn't be drawn too much into that. He also said that there's lots that still needs to be done. And while there has been progress, the ANC will be looking at dealing with things like unemployment. He said on the list of improvements, things like no-fee schools, social grants and school nutrition programs. Lots coming out of that briefing there with ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe.
All right, let's move on and get back into the news with the labour theme now. South Africa's labour laws have led to massive job losses and the casualisation of workers in the agricultural sector over the past 20 years.
These are the startling details which came out of research by the International Labour Organization on farm workers living and working conditions in South Africa. The report was commissioned by Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Labour following farm workers' violent protest action in the Western Cape in 2012.
A jobs bloodbath in the agricultural sector, the ILO says part of the problem is unintended consequences of the country's labour laws. Apart from job losses, these laws have also triggered a spike of evictions of farm workers.
So has this policy worked for the agricultural industry? It seems, unfortunately, not. The number of farming units have declined by 30% over the last 10 years. The average solvency of farms has declined to the worst level in 30 years as debt growth outstripped asset growth, and the number of workers have declined by 30% over 20 years.
Lawmakers have also been warned about exacerbating the already dire situation by banning labour brokers. The ILO suggests that they play a crucial role in providing seasonal workers to the agricultural sector.
Labour brokering should be better regulated instead of being banned outright, as we suspect that, problematic as they might be, labour brokers play an important role in coordinating the increasingly seasonal component of permanent work.
There were mixed reactions to the report. While some suggest it was incomplete, others say it points to government's failure to implement its own policies.
The eviction, which the report reflects here, is difficult to know. It's a reflection of failure on policy implementation. We do have a policy on extension of security of tenure, but yet evictions continue to take place.
The views of organized labor and NGOs and the whole social movements operating in that terrain of inquiry don't seem to have been taken on board, unless if I missed something. Because organized labor would also have stakeholder approach to the questions at hand, and therefore if you just go to farms, so many farms per province times this, so it was 10 case studies, it then excludes, my colleague talked about apartheid era, it would be like apartheid era when views of stakeholders didn't really bother, you know.
Among other wide-ranging recommendations, the report suggests that the government should consider amending the Labour Relations Act so that it protects both unionized and non-unionized workers. Manelisi Tubase, SABC News, Parliament.
The concerns over the economy continued. DA leader Musi Maimane told thousands of party faithful that the economy had failed to grow and create jobs.
The opposition party lays the blame squarely at the door of the ANC.
The message high in the sky, and it has found resonance on the ground. A sea of blue. They want jobs.
The job is scarce, and a lot of youth are not working.
I'm unemployed now. I can't find a job. I have a degree. And there are so many people who are just like me, I've studied with.
We are young, we are old, we are black, we are white. We are together in this.
According to Stats SA, 5.4 million South Africans don't have jobs. The DA believes there are solutions. Stop red tape, fund small businesses, attract more direct foreign investments, but also give RDP homeowners title deeds so they have land as surety.
The current government does not have legitimacy in the economy. They can't lead the economy, and when you put a message about job creation, they come and break it down. And so they have lost because they don't have a plan around the economy, they are not coordinated.
Maimane is expected to release a fairness document, a plan on how the DA wants to even the playing field between black and white. Aldrin St. Pierre, SABC News, Johannesburg.
African leaders have started taking a hard look at the challenges facing the continent, and the situation is not a particularly pleasing one. Opening the African Union Executive Council of Ministers meeting, AU Chair Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma warned that resolving Africa's challenges is going to take more than lip service.
4 years away from our target year to silence the guns of women, men and children in the few countries still plagued by conflict and in the regions facing the threats of terrorism and violent extremism. We must not be deterred from our goal of bringing about peace. The peoples of Mali, South Sudan, Darfur, Libya, Somalia, others can live in peace and harmony and can join the march towards the Africa we want.
To the markets now. It was a good day on the JSE, even though the mood has soured on global markets tonight, following disappointing forecasts from Apple. Here's a quick look at your indicators. The JSE All-Share Index lifted close to 1% today. Strong gains reported among industrial and platinum stocks. Those platinum miners rose by more than 1.5%. The gold miners dipped slightly, though. The rand was steady at around 16.40 to the dollar today, ahead of the first meeting this year of America's central bank. The U.S. Fed Reserve will provide more clues tonight as to when it will next raise interest rates. The expectation of more rate hikes